You were not born to struggle your way through life, hoping that one day success might accidentally find you. You are born with intention, with design, and with a built-in capacity to create a life where victory becomes the natural result of the way you think, the way you act, and the way you live. Winning was never meant to be an occasional event in your life. Winning was meant to become your lifestyle. The greatest tragedy in life is not failure. The greatest tragedy is living beneath your potential while carrying within you the power to rise above every limitation. Too many people wake up each morning reacting to life instead of directing it. They wait for the right moment, the right opportunity, the right connection, or the right breakthrough. They hope circumstances will change, people will change, and luck will finally turn in their favor. But victory does not belong to those who wait. Victory belongs to those who prepare. Winning does not begin when an opportunity appears in your life, and it does not begin when circumstances finally seem favorable. Because if that were true, then everyone who encounters opportunity would automatically succeed. But that is clearly not the case, because many people stand in front of great opportunities and still fail to produce meaningful results, while others take small, seemingly insignificant chances and turn them into extraordinary outcomes. And the difference between these two types of people is not the size of the opportunity, but the strength of their identity. Because identity determines how you think, how you respond, how you act, and ultimately what you create in your life. And until you understand this, you will always be tempted to chase external chances instead of building internal capacity. But the truth is that you cannot consistently produce results that are greater than the way you see yourself, because your identity sets the ceiling for your behavior, and your behavior produces your results, which means if you see yourself as limited, unprepared, or unworthy, you will subconsciously sabotage opportunities even when they are placed directly in front of you, because you will either hesitate, doubt yourself, or fail to follow through with the discipline required to turn that opportunity into success. And that is why so many people live frustrated lives, not because they lack chances, but because they lack the identity that can sustain success. And if you truly desire to create a life where winning becomes natural, then you must stop asking when your opportunity will come and start asking who you must become. Because becoming always precedes having. An identity always precedes opportunity. And when your identity is aligned with growth, discipline, and purpose, you no longer need to chase opportunities, because you become the kind of person who attracts, recognizes, and maximizes them. And this is a powerful shift in thinking, because it moves your focus from external conditions to internal development, which is the only thing you truly control. And once you take control of your identity, you begin to take control of your life, because your identity influences your standards, and your standards determine what you accept, what you reject, and what you pursue. And when your standards rise, your actions follow. And when your actions improve, your results begin to reflect that change. And over time, this creates a pattern of success that is no longer dependent on luck or timing, but is instead rooted in who you are becoming. And this is why two people can be given the same opportunity and produce completely different outcomes. Because one sees the opportunity through the lens of doubt and limitation, while the other sees it through the lens of possibility and growth. And that difference in perception comes from identity, not circumstance. And if you do not intentionally shape your identity, it will be shaped for you by your environment, your past experiences, and the opinions of others, which often leads to a limited version of yourself that is far below your true potential. But you have the power to redefine who you are. You have the ability to reject labels that have been placed on you. And you have the responsibility to build an identity that aligns with the future you desire. And this requires conscious effort, because transformation does not happen by accident. It happens through deliberate decisions, consistent actions, and a commitment to growth. And as you begin to shift your identity, you will notice that your thinking starts to change, your confidence starts to grow, and your willingness to take action begins to increase. And this is where momentum is created, because a strong identity fuels consistent behavior, and consistent behavior produces reliable results. And eventually those results reinforce your identity, creating a cycle where success builds upon itself. And this is how winning becomes natural, not because life becomes easier, but because you become stronger, wiser, and more disciplined. And when challenges arise, as they always will, you no longer see them as threats, but as opportunities to grow, because your identity is no longer rooted in fear, but in purpose. And this gives you resilience, which is one of the most important qualities of a winning life, because success is not determined by how many opportunities you encounter, but by how consistently you can respond to them with clarity, confidence, and discipline. And all of those qualities flow from identity. And this is why you must guard your self-image carefully, because what you believe about yourself will either empower you or limit you. And if you want to create a life where winning is automatic, you must begin by building an identity that supports that outcome, an identity that sees challenges as growth, that values discipline over comfort, that prioritizes purpose over convenience, and that refuses to settle for mediocrity. Because once that identity is established, your actions will begin to align with it, your habits will reinforce it, and your results will reflect it. And at that point, winning will no longer feel like something you are trying to achieve, but something that naturally flows from who you are becoming. Because when identity is strong, opportunity becomes a tool, not a requirement. And that is the moment when your life shifts from chasing success to creating it consistently. Discipline is the bridge between intention and reality. And without it, even the strongest desires remain unfulfilled ideas, because wanting success does not produce success. Planning success does not produce success. And even understanding success does not produce success, because success is the result of repeated, disciplined action over time. And this is where many people struggle, not because they lack ambition, but because they lack consistency. And inconsistency is the silent destroyer of potential, because it breaks momentum, weakens habits, and prevents progress from compounding. And when progress does not compound, results remain small and irregular, which leads to frustration, doubt, and eventually quitting. But discipline eliminates this instability by creating a structure that does not depend on emotions. And this is important because emotions are unreliable. They change from day to day, moment to moment. And if your actions are based on how you feel, your results will always be unpredictable, because there will be days when you feel motivated and productive, but there will also be days when you feel tired, distracted, or uninspired. And if you allow those feelings to dictate your behavior, your progress will always be inconsistent. But discipline changes that pattern by establishing a standard that you follow, regardless of how you feel. And this is what transforms success from a possibility into a predictable outcome. Because when your actions are consistent, your results become consistent. And when your results are consistent, success stops being uncertain and starts becoming expected. And this is the power of discipline. It removes guesswork from your life and replaces it with structure. And structure creates stability. And stability creates progress. And progress builds confidence. And confidence reinforces discipline, creating a cycle where success feeds itself. And this is how winning becomes automatic. Not because life becomes easier, but because your behavior becomes reliable. And reliability is what produces long-term results, because small actions performed consistently are far more powerful than occasional bursts of effort. And this is where many people misunderstand success. They believe it requires dramatic effort or extraordinary talent, but in reality, success is usually the result of ordinary actions repeated with extraordinary consistency. And discipline is what makes that consistency possible. Because it turns actions into habits, and habits reduce the need for decision-making, which means you no longer waste energy deciding whether or not you will act, because the decision has already been made in advance. And this is what gives disciplined individuals an advantage. They do not negotiate with themselves every day. They follow a system. And systems are powerful because they operate automatically. And when your life is built on effective systems, success becomes the natural outcome of following those systems, rather than something you have to constantly chase or force. And this is why discipline is not about restriction. It is about freedom, because it frees you from the chaos of inconsistency. It frees you from the frustration of unfulfilled potential. And it frees you from the cycle of starting and stopping. And when you are free from those limitations, you can focus your energy on growth, improvement, and execution. And over time, this creates momentum. And momentum makes everything easier. Because once you build a pattern of consistent action, each step forward requires less effort than the one before. And this is how discipline simplifies success. It reduces resistance and increases efficiency. And eventually, your daily actions become so aligned with your goals that progress feels natural. And when progress feels natural, winning becomes predictable. And this is the goal, to reach a point where success is not dependent on rare moments of motivation, but is instead the result of your daily routine. And this requires commitment, because discipline is not built in a day. It is built through repeated choices. Through moments when you choose to act, even when it is inconvenient, even when it is uncomfortable, and even when no one is watching. Because true discipline is internal. It is a standard you set for yourself, not a pressure imposed by others. And when you develop that internal standard, you become self-directed, which means you no longer need external pressure to perform. You hold yourself accountable, and accountability strengthens discipline, and discipline strengthens consistency, and consistency strengthens results, and this progression continues until success becomes embedded in your lifestyle. And at that point, winning is no longer something you hope for, it is something you expect, because your actions are aligned with your goals every single day. And this is what makes success predictable. Not talent, not luck, not timing, but disciplined consistency. And if you commit to building that discipline, you will find that your life begins to change in a powerful way, because you are no longer relying on chance, you are relying on structure. And structure produces results, and those results reinforce your belief in the process, which motivates you to continue. And as you continue, your habits become stronger, your focus becomes sharper, and your ability to execute improves. And all of this leads to a point where success is no longer difficult to achieve, because you have trained yourself to operate in a way. Up in the morning, move through the day, and that is when discipline has done its work. When your actions are so consistent and so aligned with your purpose that winning is no longer an exception, but the standard. Purpose is the force that gives meaning to effort and direction to discipline. And without it, even the most consistent actions can feel empty and exhausting. Because when you do not know why you are doing something, your energy becomes scattered, your focus becomes weak, and your commitment becomes unstable. And this is why many people start strong but fail to continue. Not because they lack ability, but because they lack clarity. And clarity is born from purpose. Because purpose answers the most important question in your life, which is not what you are doing, but why you are doing it. And when that question is answered with conviction, something powerful happens within you. Because your actions are no longer driven by pressure, comparison, or temporary motivation, but by a deeper sense of meaning that sustains you even when things become difficult. And difficulty is inevitable on the path to success. Which means if your effort is not connected to purpose, you will eventually lose the strength to continue. Because discipline without purpose feels like punishment, but discipline with purpose feels like investment, and that difference changes everything. Because when you see your actions as an investment in something meaningful, you become more willing to stay consistent, more willing to endure discomfort, and more willing to push beyond your limits. And this is what transforms ordinary effort into extraordinary results. Because purpose amplifies your energy, it sharpens your focus, and it aligns your decisions with a clear direction. And when your decisions are aligned, your progress becomes more efficient, because you are no longer wasting time on things that do not matter. And this is one of the greatest advantages of living with purpose. It eliminates distraction by giving you a standard for what deserves your attention, because not everything that is available to you is beneficial to you, and not every opportunity is the right opportunity. But when you understand your purpose, you gain the ability to say no to what is unnecessary, so you can say yes to what is essential. And this level of focus creates momentum, because your energy is no longer divided, it is concentrated, and concentrated effort produces stronger results, and stronger results reinforce your commitment, creating a cycle where purpose fuels action and action strengthens purpose. And over time, this cycle builds a life that is not only successful but also fulfilling, because success without purpose often leads to emptiness, where achievements are reached but satisfaction is missing. But when your success is connected to purpose, every victory carries meaning. Every step forward feels significant, and every challenge becomes an opportunity to grow into a better version of yourself. And this is what makes purpose so powerful. It transforms the way you experience your journey, because instead of seeing obstacles as interruptions, you begin to see them as part of your development. And this perspective gives you resilience, because you are no longer discouraged by difficulty. You are strengthened by it. And resilience is essential for creating a life where winning becomes automatic, because automatic winning does not mean a life without resistance. It means becoming the kind of person who can move through resistance without losing direction. And purpose is what keeps you anchored when everything around you feels uncertain, because it reminds you of what truly matters. And when you are anchored in purpose, you are less likely to be influenced by temporary emotions, external opinions, or short-term distractions because your focus is fixed on something greater than the moment. And this stability allows you to maintain consistency, and consistency is what turns effort. Up in the morning, move through the day, a cup and at what creates automatic winning. But it all begins with purpose, because without purpose, there is no clear direction. And without direction, there is no sustained progress. And without sustained progress, there is no lasting success. And this is why discovering your purpose is not a luxury, it is a necessity, because it determines how you use your time, how you invest your energy, and how you shape your future. And once you understand that your life is not random but intentional, that you are not here by accident but by design, you begin to approach your decisions with greater responsibility, because you realize that your actions are not just affecting the present moment, but are building the life you will eventually live. And this awareness changes the way you think, because you stop choosing what is easy and start choosing what is meaningful. And meaningful choices lead to meaningful results. And meaningful results create a sense of fulfillment that cannot be achieved through temporary success. And this fulfillment becomes a source of motivation that is far more powerful than external rewards, because it comes from within. And when your motivation comes from within, it becomes sustainable. And sustainable motivation is what allows you to continue even when progress is slow, even when results are delayed, and even when challenges arise, because your commitment is no longer dependent on immediate outcomes. It is rooted in long-term purpose. And this is what gives you endurance. And endurance is what separates those who start from those who finish. And those who finish are the ones who experience the full reward of their effort. And when your life is guided by purpose, your actions become intentional, your discipline becomes meaningful, your focus becomes sharper, and your progress becomes consistent. And as all of these elements come together, success stops being something you occasionally experience and starts becoming something you consistently create. And that is when winning becomes automatic, because your life is no longer driven by chance, it is directed by purpose. A life of automatic victory is not created by isolated effort or occasional bursts of motivation, but by the alignment of your mindset, your habits, and your environment working together in harmony. Because when these three elements are disconnected, your progress becomes inconsistent and your results become unpredictable. But when they are aligned, success begins to flow naturally from the way you live. And this alignment is what transforms winning from a struggle into a system. Because your mindset determines how you think, your habits determine how you act, and your environment determines what influences you. And if any one of these is working against the others, it creates internal conflict that slows your growth, because you cannot think positively while living in negative habits and expect consistent results. And you cannot build disciplined habits while surrounding yourself with distractions and expect to maintain focus. And you cannot create a powerful environment if your mindset is filled with doubt and limitation, because each of these elements is connected and they must support each other if you want to experience sustained success. And this is where many people fail, not because they lack effort, but because their effort is scattered across conflicting patterns, where their goals say one thing, but their habits say another, where their vision is strong, but their environment is weak. And this misalignment creates friction. And friction makes progress difficult, because every step forward requires unnecessary resistance. But when alignment is established, that resistance begins to disappear and your actions become more natural, your focus becomes clearer, and your progress becomes smoother. And this is the point where winning starts to feel automatic, because your daily life is no longer working against your goals, it is working with them. And this begins with your mindset, because your thoughts are the foundation of everything else. And if your mindset is rooted in fear, doubt, or limitation, it will weaken your habits and influence your environment in a negative way. But when your mindset is rooted in growth, confidence, and purpose, it strengthens your habits and guides you to create an environment that supports your success. And once your thinking is aligned with your goals, your actions begin to follow. And this is where habits come into play, because habits are the practical expression of your mindset. They are what turn your beliefs into behavior. And when your habits are aligned with your vision, they create consistency, and consistency builds momentum, and momentum produces results, and results reinforce your belief, creating a cycle where success feeds itself. But habits alone are not enough if your environment is constantly pulling you in the opposite direction, because your environment has a powerful influence on your behavior, often more than your intentions. which means if you are surrounded by distractions, negativity, or lack of structure, it becomes much harder to maintain discipline. But when you intentionally design your environment to support your goals, you reduce the effort required to stay consistent because your surroundings begin to reinforce the behavior you want to maintain. And this is why alignment is so powerful, because it creates a system where your mindset, habits, and environment are all moving in the same direction. And when everything is moving in the same direction, progress accelerates because there is no internal conflict, no wasted energy, and no unnecessary resistance. And this acceleration is what makes success feel automatic, because your life is structured in a way that naturally produces positive outcomes. And this does not mean challenges will disappear, but it does mean to handle them, because your foundation is strong. And a strong foundation allows you to remain stable even when circumstances are unstable. And this stability is essential for long-term success because it prevents you from being easily distracted, discouraged, or derailed. And over time, as you continue to maintain this alignment, your actions become more refined, your focus becomes sharper, and your results become more consistent. And consistency is what turns success into a pattern. And patterns are what define your life, because what you do repeatedly is what you ultimately become. And when your patterns are aligned with growth, discipline, and purpose, your life begins to reflect those qualities in a powerful way. And this is when winning is no longer something you have to force. It becomes something that naturally emerges from the way you think, the way you act, and the way you live. Because alignment removes the barriers that once held you back and replaces them with a structure that supports your progress. And this structure is what allows you to move forward with confidence, because you know that your daily actions are leading you in the right direction. And that knowledge creates certainty, and certainty strengthens commitment, and commitment sustains consistency, and consistency produces results, and results reinforce alignment, creating a continuous cycle of growth and success. And this is how a life of automatic victory is built, not through chance, not through luck, but through intentional alignment, where every part of your life is working together to produce the outcome you desire. And when that alignment becomes your standard, winning is no longer occasional, it becomes inevitable.